What's Happening brought laughter, friendship, and everyday struggles into our living rooms in 1976. But while the sitcom stayed frozen in time, their real lives did not. Fame faded, health failed, and time left its mark. And when you see where they are in 2026, the difference will leave you truly stunned. Danielle Spencer as D. Thomas. Danielle Spencer was born on June 24, 1965, in the Bronx, New York. At 11 years old, she played D. Thomas, the sharp-tongued, sassy younger sister who constantly challenged her brother Raj in What's Happening, 1976. Dee's wit and fearless attitude added bite to the sitcom, preventing it from becoming sentimental and giving the show its youthful edge. That confidence on screen contrasted sharply with her private life. Spencer's marriage to Gary Fields ended in divorce in 2013, leaving her emotionally drained after years of trying to balance love, career shifts, and financial instability while retraining outside Hollywood. A later marriage to David L. David brought companionship, but not escape from the long shadow cast by earlier losses and unresolved trauma. The physical consequences of her past never faded. A devastating 1977 car accident left her in a coma for 3 weeks and caused her stepfather's death, triggering spinal damage that resurfaced decades later as spinal stenosis, requiring surgery that left her partially paralyzed for 8 months. As she rebuilt her life, she was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2014, then survived emergency brain surgery in 2018, each illness compounding years of chronic pain and exhaustion. Finally, he died on August 11, 2025, at 60 years old, from stomach cancer and cardiac arrest in Richmond, Virginia. She was remembered not only as Dee, but as a veterinarian, author, and advocate, with an estimated net worth of about $300,000, a modest sum reflecting a life redirected toward service, resilience, and meaning beyond fame. Ernest Thomas as Roger Raj. Thomas Ernest Thomas was born on March 26, 1949, in Gary, Indiana. At 27 years old, he played Roger Raj Thomas, the responsible, sharp-witted older brother at the center of the group in What's Happening, 1976. Raj's steady presence anchored the comedy, giving the series balance and credibility and making Thomas the emotional spine of the show. That success, however, reshaped his private life. As the series ended, Thomas's marriage to a fellow actress collapsed under mounting pressure, and the divorce left him increasingly isolated just as steady work began to disappear. Being inseparable from the image of Raj made auditions harder to secure, and the frustration intensified after he lost both parents within the span of a single year, removing the last pillars of stability in his life. With emotional strain came serious health battles. Thomas has lived his entire life with amblyopia, an eye condition that affected his confidence on screen, and during the years of unemployment he descended into severe depression, at times experiencing homelessness and suicidal thoughts. Even when he continued to work in respected productions, such as Roots, Malcolm X, and later Everybody Hates Chris, those roles arrived sporadically and never fully erased the psychological damage caused by abrupt fame followed by neglect. Today, Ernest Thomas is 77 years old and remains active in entertainment as a guest actor and motivational speaker, using his story as a cautionary and hopeful example. His estimated net worth of around $500,000 reflects not excess but survival, earned through persistence, recovery, and a career rebuilt on honesty rather than spotlight. Thalmus Rasulala as Bill Thomas. Thalmus Rasulala was born on November 15, 1939, in Miami, Florida. At 41 years old, he played Bill Thomas, the quiet, principled father of Raj and Dee, in What's Happening, 1976. His restrained authority gave the family structure and emotional credibility, grounding the comedy in realism rather than caricature. That stability masked a life shaped by pressure. Rasulala married twice. first to Martha Roberts, with whom he had 3 children before divorcing in 1977, then later to Shirley Mozingo in 1984. As steady roles declined with the fall of blaxploitation cinema, long periods away from home strained both marriages and gradually distanced him from his children, turning professional uncertainty into personal fracture. The physical toll followed. Years of intense schedules and financial stress contributed to chronic hypertension, a condition he struggled to control while continuing to work across stage, television, and film. Though respected for roles in Blackula and Roots, the constant hustle to remain visible kept his body under sustained strain. He died on October 9, 1991, at 55 years old, from a heart attack in Albuquerque, New Mexico, shortly after completing his final film role. With an estimated net worth of about $300,000, his legacy reflects a working actor who carried weight and dignity on screen while paying a heavy personal price behind it. Haywood Nelson, as Dwayne Nelson. Haywood Nelson was born on March 25, 1960, in New York City. At 16 years old, he played Dwayne Nelson, the shy, gentle teenager known for his "Hey, hey, hey" catchphrase in What's Happening, 1976. Dwayne's warmth and innocence softened the show's humor and turned Nelson into a rare black teen idol almost overnight. As childhood fame faded, his personal life became increasingly unstable. Nelson went through 4 marriages and divorces to Cheryl Pyland, Diana Ramos, Kanadia Sky, and Paula de Jesus, each separation deepening emotional strain and financial pressure while widening the distance between him and his children. The repeated breakdown of relationships mirrored a career stalled by typecasting, leaving him without either domestic or professional security. Physical trauma followed emotional loss. A serious car accident caused lasting injuries, and the later death of his older brother intensified a long-standing sense of grief. Acting opportunities became infrequent, limited to scattered appearances, and the cumulative weight of loss pushed Nelson away from the camera and toward work that offered steadier ground. Now, Haywood Nelson is 66 years old and continues to work behind the scenes in television production, lighting, and technical consulting. With an estimated net worth of about $500,000, his life now reflects quiet endurance, choosing continuity and stability over fame, and remaining part of the industry in a way that no longer demands personal sacrifice. Fritzy Burr as Miss Collins. Fritzy Burr was born on May 31, 1924, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. At 53 years old, she played Miss Collins, the strict but fair teacher who demanded discipline while quietly protecting her students, in What's Happening, 1977. Her presence added authority and tension, reminding viewers that consequences existed beyond jokes and hallways. That firmness contrasted with a fragile private life. Burr's marriage ended when her husband left for another woman, and she never had children, a loss that grew heavier as acting opportunities narrowed for older women. As television roles became smaller and less frequent, work shifted from visibility to necessity, reinforcing long stretches of emotional solitude. Chronic illness slowly limited her independence. Burr lived with severe arthritis, which made long days on set increasingly difficult, and recurrent respiratory problems weakened her health further in later years. As mobility declined, so did her public presence, leaving her largely unseen by the industry she had served for decades. Sadly, she died on January 17, 2003, at 78 years old, from complications of pneumonia in Fort Myers, Florida. With an estimated net worth of about $100,000, her life closed quietly, remembered less for fame than for the steady professionalism that sustained her through an unforgiving system. Fred Berry as Freddie Rerun Stubbs. Fred Berry was born on March 19, 1951, in St. Louis, Missouri. At 25 years old, he played Freddie Rerun Stubbs, the exuberant heavyset dancer whose disco moves stole every scene in What's Happening, 1976. Reruns' physical comedy and infectious energy became the show's visual signature, turning Barry into one of the most recognizable faces on 1970s television. That popularity, however, destabilized his personal life. Barry married and divorced multiple times, including unions with Francesca Barry, Carol Ann Ross, Darlene Bitton, and later Essie Barry, relationships strained by addiction, financial chaos, and long absences. As the laughter faded, isolation deepened, and family ties weakened under the weight of repeated breakdowns. His health deteriorated alongside his finances. Barry battled drug and alcohol addiction, lost nearly $1 million through substance abuse and failed investments, and later faced obesity, type 2 diabetes, and severe depression, attempting suicide 3 times. A stroke in his early 50s marked a turning point, pushing him toward religion and motivational speaking, but the damage to his body proved irreversible. He died on October 21, 2003, at 52 years old, from complications of a stroke at his Los Angeles home. He was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in the Hollywood Hills, leaving behind a legacy defined by joy on screen and struggle off it, with an estimated net worth of about $100,000 at the time of his death, a stark contrast to the fame his dancing once commanded. Shirley Hemphill as Shirley Wilson. Shirley Hemphill was born on July 1, 1947, in Asheville, North Carolina. At 29 years old, she played Shirley Wilson, the fast-talking, brassy waitress who never missed a beat, in What's Happening, 1976. Her comic timing sharpened every scene at Rob's Place, turning background banter into one of the show's most reliable laughs. That momentum stalled when career decisions narrowed her options. Hemphill declined a proposed spin-off opportunity tied to Good Times, then watched her own series One in a Million collapse after a short run, leaving her to rely on stand-up work and guest appearances while momentum slipped away. She chose not to marry and had no children, a path that gradually deepened isolation as work became less consistent. Health problems compounded the strain. Hemphill lived with chronic kidney disease and diabetes, conditions that worsened through the 1990s and limited her stamina on stage and screen. As bookings thinned, the illnesses progressed quietly, leaving her increasingly alone and medically fragile. Finally, Shirley Hemphill died on December 10, 1999, at 52 years old, from kidney failure at her home in West Covina, California, and was later cremated. Her estimated net worth of about $200,000 reflected a career built on laughter and perseverance, ending far from the spotlight she once commanded. Helen Martin as Millie. Helen Martin was born on July 23, 1909, in St. Louis, Missouri. At 67 years old, she played Millie, the warm, observant neighbor, in What's Happening, 1976. Millie's calm presence softened the series, offering wisdom and continuity that grounded its youthful energy. Her personal life moved in the opposite direction. Martin never married and had no children, and the deaths of close family members gradually narrowed her circle, leaving long stretches of solitude as work ebbed and flowed. Even as later television success arrived, companionship remained elusive. Physical decline followed age and endurance. Years of demanding stage and television work left her with chronic arthritis, limiting mobility, and persistent cardiac issues shadowed her final decade. Despite discomfort, she continued working selectively, relying on discipline rather than ease. Sadly, she died on March 25, 2000, at 90 years old, from a heart attack in Monterey, California. With an estimated net worth of about $150,000, her long career closed quietly, defined less by wealth than by resilience, and a presence that endured long after applause faded. Mabel King as Mabel Mama. Thomas. Mabel King was born on December 25, 1932, in Charleston, South Carolina. At 44 years old, she played Mabel Mama Thomas, the firm, loving matriarch who held the family together, in What's Happening, 1976. Her authority grounded the comedy, giving the series moral weight and emotional balance. Creative conflict soon disrupted that stability. King left the show after 2 seasons following disagreements over the character's direction, a break that curtailed steady television work and exposed her to the industry's racial and contractual barriers. Her marriage to Melvin King ended in divorce, and the later death of her son Larry Jr. in 1996 from gun violence intensified her withdrawal from public life. Severe illness then dominated her final years. King battled advanced diabetes, suffering repeated amputations, first toes, then both legs, and later an arm, along with a stroke in 1990 that effectively ended her career. Long-term care replaced auditions, and independence gave way to constant medical supervision. Finally, Mabel King died on November 9, 1999, at 66 years old, from complications of diabetes after years of progressive decline. With an estimated net worth of about $150,000, her legacy rests on strength and dignity under pressure, remembered for a role that embodied protection even as her own life narrowed. Teddy Wilson as Al Dunbar. Teddy Wilson was born on December 10, 1943 in Harlem, New York. At 33 years old, he played Al Dunbar, the smooth, confident charmer, in What's Happening, 1976. Al's relaxed swagger added adult contrast to the younger cast, widening the show's social world and giving its humor a sharper edge. That polished screen image hid a turbulent private life. Wilson married twice, relationships strained by erratic schedules and financial pressure, and the loss of his young son in a car accident deepened the fractures within his family. As opportunities fluctuated, domestic stability eroded, turning professional uncertainty into personal distance. Health problems intensified the strain. Wilson lived with diabetes and chronic hypertension, conditions that worsened under stress, and after undergoing open-heart surgery, his recovery remained fragile. The cumulative damage culminated in a stroke, abruptly cutting short a career still in motion. He died on July 21, 1991, at 47 years old, from complications of a stroke at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. With an estimated net worth of about $200,000, his legacy reflects a working actor caught between promise and pressure, remembered for charm on screen and quiet struggle behind it. Nathaniel Taylor as Ike. Nathaniel Taylor was born on March 31, 1938, in St. Louis, Missouri. At 39 years old, he played Ike, the easygoing, good-natured friend who brought warmth and familiarity to the group in What's Happening, 1977. Ike's presence added comfort and continuity, reinforcing the show's sense of extended family beyond the main household. That on-screen warmth was reflected in a largely stable personal life. Taylor married Loretta Taylor, and together they raised a large family of 7 children, a responsibility that gradually pulled him away from the unpredictability of television work. As acting roles slowed after the late 1970s, he chose consistency over visibility, stepping back from Hollywood to focus on family and community theater. Health concerns emerged later in life. Taylor developed chronic heart disease, a condition that increasingly limited his energy and ultimately shaped his final years. Even as his acting career faded, he redirected his experience into teaching and mentoring young performers, keeping a connection to the craft without the physical strain of constant production. Finally, Nathaniel Taylor died on February 27, 2019, at 80 years old, from complications of a heart attack in Los Angeles. With an estimated net worth of about $200,000, his legacy rests on steadiness rather than stardom, remembered as a dependable character actor who quietly invested in others once the spotlight moved on. Ray Vitte, as Jean Ray Vitte, was born on November 20, 1949, in New York City. At 28 years old, he played Gene, the energetic, fast-moving young man who added momentum and edge in What's Happening, 1977. Gene's restless energy reflected a different side of the show's world, hinting at ambition and volatility beyond everyday humor. That volatility defined his private life as well. Vitte married Joan Mack, and the relationship quickly became strained by his substance addiction, escalating arguments, and financial instability as work grew inconsistent. The pressures of Hollywood intensified existing personal fractures, leaving little room for recovery or balance. His health and behavior deteriorated rapidly. Vitte struggled with drug dependence and psychological instability, culminating in a severe medical crisis marked by fever, confusion, and cardiac distress. What began as a psychiatric emergency escalated into a physical confrontation, pushing his already fragile heart beyond its limits. Sadly, Ray Vitte died on February 20th, 1983, at 33 years old, from a heart attack following a scuffle with police in Los Angeles while being transported for medical evaluation. With an estimated net worth of about $100,000, his life ended abruptly, remembered as a brief, troubled career cut short before stability ever had a chance to form. Stu Gilliam as Gary. Stu Gilliam was born on July 27, 1933, in Detroit, Michigan. At 43 years old, he played Gary, the quick-witted, humorous presence who cut through tension with sharp comedy, in What's Happening? 1976. Gary's timing and edge gave the series an adult counterweight, letting humor land without softening the show's realism. That visibility proved fleeting. As sitcom opportunities narrowed after the series, Gilliam's marriage unraveled and his relationship with his daughter grew strained, leaving him increasingly isolated as steady work became harder to secure. The shift from crowded sets to long stretches without roles turned professional disappointment into emotional distance. Health issues compounded the retreat. Gilliam struggled with heart disease, later battling lung cancer and COPD, conditions that limited stamina and accelerated decline. Even as he continued to perform selectively, the physical cost of decades on the road caught up quickly. He died on October 11, 2013, at 80 years old, from a heart attack in České Budějovice, Czech Republic, and was buried in Bořov nad Vltavou. With an estimated net worth of about $150,000, his life closed far from Hollywood, remembered for a sharp comedic voice that endured even as the industry moved on. Greg Morris as Lawrence Nelson. Greg Morris was born on September 27, 1933, in Cleveland, Ohio. At 44 years old, he played Lawrence Nelson, Dwayne's firm, disciplined father in What's Happening? 1977. His authority brought gravity to the family dynamic, reinforcing the show's stakes beyond humor. Behind that composure, pressure mounted. Morris's long marriage to Leona Keys strained under constant travel and demanding schedules, creating distance at home even as his reputation grew from major television success. Financial responsibilities and career momentum often pulled him away from family, a tension that lingered for years. Illness then reshaped everything. After surviving a serious car accident, Morris was diagnosed with brain cancer, later complicated by lung cancer, forcing an abrupt slowdown and ending regular work. The decline was swift, replacing momentum with prolonged treatment and uncertainty. He died on August 27, 1996, at 62 years old, from cancer in Las Vegas, Nevada. With an estimated net worth of about $400,000, his legacy rests on discipline and endurance, an actor who carried authority on screen while fighting a private battle that cut his career short. Danny Wells as Bert Frederick. Danny Wells was born on April 7, 1941, in Montreal, Canada. At 35 years old, he played Bert Frederick, the playful, light-hearted character who added rhythm and comic relief in What's Happening? 1976. Bert's brief appearances helped keep the series lively, reinforcing its fast pace and everyday humor without pulling focus from the core cast. That upbeat screen presence contrasted with a restless personal life. Wells married twice, and both marriages ended in divorce, leaving him without children and increasingly alone as the years passed. As his career settled into supporting and guest roles, the lack of long-term stability at home mirrored the professional reality of always being familiar, but rarely indispensable. Health struggles gradually took over. Wells was diagnosed with cancer, an illness that progressed quietly while he continued to work when possible, relying on routine and professionalism rather than attention. The disease limited his later years, narrowing his world as physical strength declined and public appearances faded. He died on November 28, 2013, at 72 years old, from cancer in Toronto, Canada, and was later buried at Mount Sinai Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles. With an estimated net worth of about $200,000, his life closed modestly, remembered for making audiences laugh while carrying a private burden far from the spotlight. Rosalind Cash as Loretta. Rosalind Cash was born on December 31, 1938, in Atlantic City, New Jersey. At 37 years old, she played Loretta, a composed, intelligent woman who brought maturity and emotional contrast in What's Happening, 1976. Though not a central figure, Loretta's presence subtly elevated the show's tone, reminding viewers that adulthood carried weight beyond jokes and youth. That quiet authority mirrored Cash's real life, marked by deliberate independence. She never married and had no children, choosing instead to center her life on work, discipline, and artistic control. While peers built families, Cash navigated an industry that rewarded visibility but rarely offered permanence, moving steadily between theater, television, and film without the safety net of domestic stability. Health challenges emerged late but moved quickly. Cash was diagnosed with cancer, an illness she kept largely private while continuing to work, including a demanding role on General Hospital shortly before her death. The physical toll intensified rapidly, compressing what might have been a long, late-career resurgence into a brief, exhausting final chapter. He died on October 31, 1995, at 56 years old, from cancer at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. With an estimated net worth of about $1 million, her legacy rests on consistency and depth, an actress respected for intelligence and restraint, whose life ended quietly despite decades of commanding presence on screen and stage. Time has changed their faces, their lives, and in some cases, their fate, far more than any of us expected. Did the laughter of What's Happening prepare them for what came after fame, or did it quietly mask a much darker reality? Now that you've seen where the cast ended up in 2026, which transformation shocked you the most, and which story stayed with you the longest? If this journey surprised you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more unforgettable then and now stories you won't believe until you see them.